My name is Chris Layton. I'm known as Chris Whipper Layton in the music profession. Probably historically, most people know me as the drummer for Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble. I've had bands, the Archangels, band Storyville. These constituted most of the largest part of my music career, other than the fact that I am the drummer for the Kenny Wayne Shepherd Band. And that's becoming a large part of my whole music history. That's it. I do a lot of other things, but that's mostly how people might know me. This is the 400th episode of Talking Blues.
I have to ask you, where does the nickname Whipper come from?
The nickname Whipper came from a Holiday Inn hotel room many years ago in Nacogdoches, Texas, which was then a Stevie Vaughan gig. We had a road manager, a guy named Cutter Brandenburg. That was his nickname. His name was Robert Brandenburg. Cutter. And he and I used to kind of trade acerbic comments back and forth, kind of kidding around. Then it seemed to get serious one night, and I challenged him to come, do something about it. He was a big old guy, very overweight. He was kind of a little bit slower than me. So he chased me around the room. The whole band was in the room, and he chased me around the room for a while till I wore him out, and then he simply fell on the bed, and he made the comment that, boy, was I a whipper snapper. And Stevie pulled whipper out of that and kind of gave me that name, and kind of it's been my nickname ever since.
You were recently in Toronto. I got a chance to see you with the Kenny Wayne Shepherd Band, which was an amazing concert. I don't know how you saw that concert, but it was an amazing concert from where I stood. When you come into Toronto, do you automatically go back to some of your previous travels? I got the chance to see you opening up for Dire Straits at Varsity Stadium or Varsity Arena. I also saw you with Stevie Ray, with Jeff Beck and Jeff Healey at the Sky Dome. I know that there was a historic concert at the El Macombo. When you come into town like that, do you go back to those dates or the previous visits?
Yeah, they crossed my mind. Actually, oddly enough, but this time, none of those things crossed my mind. But the kind of whole vibe and the tonality of Toronto, I felt that the actual city more than just the specific memories. Funny that you mentioned that, because you see, I can contextualize cities and like show that I played there, just what I did, my activities while I was there doing a show. But I kind of actually felt the actual city.
You,
Um,
you also came in on a very snowy day, or the day before, I guess.
yes, yeah, true. But that's I've had all kinds of weather in all kinds of cities all over the place. So I mean, that kind of always tempers the feel of that. But just Toronto, driving down Yonge Street, and um, actually for some reason I thought about being in Spadina, and the one thought that crossed my mind was the last time I was there, I'd gone to this Chinese restaurant called the New Ho King.
Right.
Yeah. I don't know if it's still there or not, but I
I
remember.
believe it is.
Is it really?
Yeah,
That's
I think
great.
so. Okay, so the other question I wanted to ask you was, when I saw you about 3 weeks ago, it was the last date of a 2 week tour. You came home since then, and then last weekend, or this past weekend, you were out for 3 days. Is there any difference in the way that you play, or that in the way you prepare and get ready for shows when you just go out for the weekend versus for a longer period of time?
Essentially no, but it's like I'm never off the gig, because when I'm not playing keeps me, in shape for the gig. I mean, the actual gig itself does that. So when I'm not doing that, um, I have certain practices and regimens that I keep up with to keep me up to speed. So when I leave, I'm going to California this weekend to do some more shows, and I like to think I'll just hit the ground running towards the shows. So it's a funny thing because I've never really stopped playing,
Right.
essentially.
Which
Yeah.
It's a pretty amazing career. Tell me about how drums first came into your life.
I got excited. I heard a song on the radio when I was 6 years old, and I'd listened to plenty of music on the radio mostly, but records around the house and whatnot. But I heard a song on the radio, and all of a sudden I really connected with the drums, and I cut a couple of tree branches out of the yard and started beating on stuff, which led to a drum, which then ultimately led to a drum set, which led to me more and more playing drums more of the time until I found myself as a professional musician, more than like a decision, you know, a decision like when I was a child that I was going to be a professional drummer. It just, I found myself, I went, this is what I am. I've been doing this really my whole life, playing drums, and now I'm doing it, and I'm making a living doing it, and that's what I am. It was kind of an awakening, and really an admission, and kind of a strange, sounds kind of cosmic, but like an acceptance. Like, well, here you are. You've been doing this your whole life, and now you're making a living at this. So, is this what you are? Is this what you do? Is this your endeavor? And I went, and it was, yes, it is. And so that's when you could say I picked a lane. I found myself in the lane of life, in that metaphor, and I've stayed on it ever since. And this is my 51st year of staying in my lane.
It's interesting that you found out through weird coincidences that your dad played the drums and kind of
Yes.
introduced you to certain types of music.
Yeah, he did that very first experience I was telling you about. He apparently he saw something. He was great like this as a father, and I actually thought I was in trouble because I'd cut off some the tree branches I was talking about that came from a plant called the oleander that's very poisonous, and
Right.
I whittled off the bark and all that. And they were oozing sap and all that, and my mother came in and asked me where I'd gotten those twigs from, and I told her. She's like, "Oh my God!" And then my dad came in and he said, "Hang on, Olga was her name." He goes, "Go wash your hands and come back here." I thought, "Oh God, I'm like going to get in trouble or something." And said he brought these stacks of big band 78s and played me Duke Ellington, Count Basie, Harry James, Glenn Miller, Harry James Orchestra, Chick Webb Orchestra for like probably a good 2-3 hours, and pulled out some brushes from where he also had those 78s stored, and kind of started playing along with them. And then he told me that he'd been a drummer in the Army Air Force. I'd never known about that until that moment.
We should also say that the song that drew you in was a Chubby Checker song.
Yeah, the twist. I think my sisters had bought the album, and they put the needle down on the song, and I just heard the intro, and all of a sudden my hair stood up, and I got my goosebumps, and that never happened before. But it turned my attention straight towards the drums, and these are these are interesting things. I think no matter what, where something kind of flips the switch for you, and whatever it might be, whoever you are, and whatever it might be, and all of a sudden you become really excited and interested in something. I maintain that I can't decide what I'm going to become interested in. All of a sudden, I will become interested in something. So um, that experience at this point, when I think about it, my life through that is to when I become excited or interested about something, it's to me, it's always a worthwhile pursuit to follow it and see where it leads me, as opposed to brushing it off.
Right. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, there's been some examples in your life that's paid off very well for you for you pursuing those instincts.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I would say so. There's only a few of them, but they were real strong, and so I followed them.
Right. I want to get into that, but you went to school and joined the school band, playing, I presume, jazz and contemporary music. How did that experience playing in a school band influence or change you as a musician?
Early on, I played beginner band, junior high band, all the stuff, orchestra, marching band, etc. But I mean, what that did was gave me actually formal music training as far as reading music, of which I quickly abandoned after I didn't play in those bands anymore. I didn't pursue, full music education, like higher education. But they set the stage for something. It was a discipline thing, and it gave me a lot of things that were good for me to have to, get under my belt, so to speak. And they serve me today. This very, stock type music school, junior high type programs. It was when I went to my first year of college, which was School Del Mar College in Corpus Christi, which actually had a really good music school. Most of the people, what I call them, were like legit players. A lot of people from Del Mar that graduated that 2 year program went to Juilliard, very like formal type pursuits as opposed to rock and roll or blues. But I didn't really do much there except try to convince the department that they needed a lab band, me and some other guys. So we basically put that band together and started playing popular music. Everybody had a good time and it was fun and all that, but it wasn't really outside the scope of what we could kind of already play anyway. So it wasn't much of a learning thing as opposed to like, hey, we got an idea. Let's see if we can pull this scheme off.
Um, what would you have hoped? Like when you initially went to Del Mar, did you have an idea of what you hoped to walk away with?
Not at all. No, because I realized I'm getting ready to go speak at a university, and I think what in my experience was by that point in time, my family had kind of a downturn of fortune, and so there really wasn't money to pay for like a really, if I even wanted one, like a real formal, higher education. Friends of mine were going to UT, A&M, SMU, Johns Hopkins, these. And I go, there's no money for me to go to a school like that. And I thought, well, what would I do there anyway? Because um, I couldn't really seem to get there. But I was kind of mostly thinking about playing drums, and I wasn't thinking about, being a doctor or a lawyer, or any other type of a career pursuits. But I went to school because I thought, well, seems like everybody's doing that, so I guess I should do it too. I paid for my college, the less than 3 years that I went, and it was a very sorting out period because I thought I was a biology major with a music minor
Hmm.
because I had a number of my family's, my parents' friends convinced me that I'd be a good doctor. I thought, well, I need biology would be a good degree. I'm going, I guess. I don't know. I don't really care about going to college, but I guess I should go. But I was paying for it. And so after close to 3 years, it was really kind of a sorting out saying, I'm wasting time here. I'm wasting time. I'm wasting my money and energy being in school because what's going on here seems to have nothing to do with what something else in my life. I sound kind of cryptic here, but I hadn't come full face to face with the idea of being a professional drummer. And then I was offered a gig, and then now I was in a professional band. It had a label deal, and I was touring and making money. I go, there, you can't be any much more of a professional musician than that circumstance. So that's when I went, you know what, do that. I dropped everything else, all the jobs I had in the school and everything else, and I just hit the road and never turned back.
So at that point, is that the point where you decided, yeah, I am a drummer, I'm a professional musician, or did that come even after that?
No, that it was then.
And
It
then,
was, and I went, yeah, this is what I am, and this is what I'm going to do. This is really what I've always wanted to do, but I never fully admitted it because I was constantly allowing myself to be kind of thrown off track by the opinions of others or the convincing of like, that's not the way anybody wants to go in life. And that's a road to failure. Mostly people don't ever, make it or they don't do well. You need to get you know, you need to have a fallback position. You should pursue something else. And diligently and enjoy your music on the side. I could never put that together. I could just never see it. Um, so I found myself, you could say I kind of fell into it. And then at that point, I just jumped into it.
this is with Greasy Wheel.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so, and this is a progressive country band.
Yeah. Kind of like hippie country rock. It was an interesting band. It had like congas and violin and electric guitar and all kinds of stuff. It was kind of like It's a Beautiful Day meets Jefferson Airplane meets the blues meets Ralph Stanley. I mean, it was kind of just a mix of a bunch of different things, it was kind of cool. It was a cool band, and it made me go, yeah, I'm a professional, and it gave me a paycheck, and I enjoyed the people, and
Did you, other than gigging and making money from gigs and possibly maybe recording, did you have any musical goals at that point?
no, I've never had a plan. I mean, goals. I mean, a goal is an interesting thing because um, I guess you could say, as I've been in any situation in my life like that, in a career situation, I'm thinking, well, I wonder how do I feel about this, and how could I be better at it? Is it really what kind of like flips my switch? Is it really do it, or is there something else? And oddly enough, it seems like in my life that something comes along and I go, wait a minute, that's more of what I feel I want, feel that I want and need, and that I pursued that. I mean, that being said, I've been committed to everything I've done.
Hmm.
Um, but I say I've never had a plan. The goal is to become better, and the goal is to try to make a better living at what I do. But the I think the real goal is to feel that whatever I'm doing is real, feels real to me, like I can really feel it when I do it. And this is kind of a nebulous thing. Words don't always, I can't always describe that with words. That's when I, the night I happened to sit in with the band Paul Ray and the Cobras and played with Stevie, I went, man, that's so real over there, what he's doing. And so when I talked to him about it, I said, God, I'd love to work with you. I go, this is just, and that wasn't even about money and how successful could we become and how big would it be. But I go, first things first is like, that's something that just seems like is so real, and it just really grabbed me. Music is something that has to grab me. And if it doesn't grab me musically, and then the whole idea of what we're doing, then I tend to kind of like wander off from that.
Is it correct to assume that that night you jammed with Stevie, he was playing the blues? Were you all playing the blues that night, or was it something else?
Well, it was the band was playing all different types of stuff, kind of R&B and some soul stuff and blues, and um, so it was kind of a mixed bag of musical genres, all closely related, but uh, stuff that I had listened to. I mean, they were basically pretty much a copy band with a few originals thrown in, but it was music that I had already played before. I went, yeah, this is great. Grover Washington tunes, Stanley Turrentine, Ronnie Laws, Bobby Bland, B.B. King, James Brown. This is the kind of the repertoire they were doing, and I went, yeah, this is great. I mean, I loved it. So that's what he was playing. He was an ensemble player, one or two guitar players in that band doing that music, but he had a standout presence. Not the guy that people came to know as Stevie Ray Vaughan, but just the fact that he played. It was like there was this special thing in what he did, power, and it was he kind of to me in all the years that I spent with him, he still kind of defies a certain description. He had flair and passion and commitment and energy and power and loving and kind, all these different great qualities all wrapped up into uh, one being.
But you saw this from playing with him for one night. I mean, did it surprise you that more people didn't maybe see that, or am I incorrect to assume that?
Oh, I think some people did, and everything the way I just described him, I don't know if I can't really honestly say that I got all that from that, the 3, 4 songs I played with the band that night, but it's hard to honestly say that after being skewed of years of working with him, what is what's what really,
Right.
But no, I left Greasy Wheels to, he asked me to play, and I left Greasy Wheels, and actually Cleve Hattersley wrote a book. He was the leader of Greasy Wheels. And he wrote a book years later, and he said, "Can I quote you in what I told you? Do you mind if I quote our conversation?" And I said, which one are you talking about?" He said, "The one where you said I'm leaving the band to go play with Stevie Vaughan," and I grabbed you by the shoulder and said, "Look into my eyes." He said, "Kid," he goes, "you're making the biggest mistake of your life." So I said, "Oh yeah, right, I remember that." I said, "Sure, you can quote that." He's At the time, people said, "Man, he's really shot loose, He's got some drug issues. And he doesn't even have a place to live. Doesn't have a car. You know, sometimes he doesn't even know where his amp is. And I go, I know all that, but I have a feeling about it, and I have a feeling about us working together and having a band. So I guess that's certainly easier to say now than it was to for us to go to work because history has kind of bared that out as to what happened there. And but I always I I remember when, especially when the band actually got to the point where it was Stevie and Tommy Shannon and myself. I was on stage one night. I thought, you know what? I love this. This is great. Nothing could be better in my musical life than this. And then my next thought was, I hope I don't have to be poor my whole life. Those were the two thoughts next to one another. So you go, okay, what are you going to do about these things? Well, keep playing the music and try to figure out how to not be poor.
I mean, the fact that you were leaving a band that was gigging regularly and you were getting regular paychecks to join a band that wasn't really established.
Yeah.
That would be an example of you following your, I don't know what the right word is, but your instincts to say, I think this is a good move. And you defined yourself as a professional musician being in this other band, getting paid, and then you're willing to give that up for an unknown entity, which is pretty amazing.
I guess it was a really 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 strongly felt instinct that really was predicated on or a blind faith that somehow we'd figure it all out.
Would it be correct to assume that you were not really a blues drummer at that point when you first met Stevie?
Totally, I wasn't a blues drummer. There's a great story about that because that night that I sat in with Paul Ray and the Cobras, a day or two later, Stevie showed up at the apartment, which my roommate, excuse me, was one of his bandmates, and he'd never been over there. And all of a sudden, he's knocking at the door, and he's standing right next to me. I'm playing my drums, and he's standing literally right next to me. He couldn't have been any closer without touching me. It startled me, and he said, "No, head, go on, man." He discovered I was listening to a record. He says, "One of my favorite records." I said, "Yeah, I'm just kind of playing along with it, kind of." And so we started talking about music, right? And who do you like? And I told him Stevie Wonder and Ray Charles and Jimi Hendrix. He's like, "Wow, you like all those people?" I said, "Yeah, Miles Davis." I went on and on. We talked on and on. But what I didn't know until almost 40 years later, I heard this story like 40 years, not quite 40 years, some thereabouts after the fact, was that when he came to the door, when he knocked on the door, his bandmate, my roommate, opened the door and said, "Hey, Steve," he goes, "well, you want to come?" He said, "No, wait, come out here for a minute." And my roommate went out and closed the door, and he said, "Has he ever played blues before?" And my friend Joseph Bless, said, "Man, he really had. He's never been in a blues band." And Stevie said, "Wow, that's cool." He goes, "That's good." He goes, Why's that good?" He said, "Because he doesn't have any weird concepts about what all that's supposed to be, as opposed to just where it could go." And then the rest of the story was one that I just told you. But I thought, you know what, he was, maybe he was looking at going, I have other things, some other things on my mind, and maybe that was kind of part of what really opened the door, as opposed to like close the door on the idea of me working with him. Because I listened back to as we made our music, and I listened back to it through the years ago, we weren't really playing blues music. We weren't quote unquote a blues band, even though we did shuffles and we did slow blues and we did. Um, and this came home to me a few years ago when Reese Winans put together a couple of different shows that we did in Nashville, where we played the music of Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble with all the Nashville guys, Kenny Greenberg and Al Anderson from NRBQ and a bunch of different people. And Gary Nicholson, we just played the songs. I went, these were songs. They're not blues tunes. They're actually like different kinds of songs.
What amazes me, did you consider yourselves a blues band? And that seems silly to ask, but
no, we never identified ourselves as anything. We just identified ourselves as us. I don't know if that wasn't arrogance. They just said, "What kind of?" They'd say, "Well, what kind of music do you say you play?" And Stevie said, we play our music." So he wasn't, and you know what? Him and Tommy and I were all on the same page about like not labeling things. Labels seem to pigeonhole, box in, or limit ideas. I mean, I go, whatever that song is, whatever song you hear, and whatever you want to call it, feel free to call it whatever you want to. We just assume not label it. I mean, we had such, all of us together and individually had such wide musical diversity in our so-called upbringing and a lot of commonalities that we go, we're just making music that we're making. Uh, we'll leave it to other people to call it whatever they want to. I mean, that gets into marketing and labeling and promoting and identifying and all that stuff. We go, we're just playing the music that we've come up with. And that's we call it our music. Yeah.
So what I find intriguing is a number of years ago when I started documenting blues, I would hear this said over and over again where people would say, every 10 years somebody comes along and kind of brings blues back to the forefront. And they would always cite Stevie Ray Vaughan, Robert Cray. But it's interesting that you didn't see it like that. Although I would imagine that you probably, I mean, do you realize what impact your band had on the blues?
I mean, you know what? I actually need to throw in a caveat there because I don't want to be dismissive or disrespectful. The three of us, the truth is that we all had a real moving affinity for really what I considered was American black cultural music, blues, jazz, soul, and so that's really what inspired us. So I don't want to be dismissive and say, "Oh, it wasn't blues," because I mean, we did get all of our early inspiration and influence from those. Or me later, when it just came to specifically, there was a whole bunch of different blues artists that I'd never even heard of. But my mom's Ray Charles records, my father's the big band stuff. We used to talk about how we thought, you know what, but jazz and soul and blues in a weird way, it seems like the same. It comes from the same origin, which really was black culture, the
Mm-hmm.
way we saw it. So I want to make it sound like because we didn't say we didn't call ourselves a blues band that we're kind of being dismissive of what had inspired us, because that's really what had inspired us.
No, and I
Uh,
get that. And I also get the fact that if anybody paid tribute to the great guitar players, the great blues guitar players, it was Stevie Ray who constantly talked about where he got some of the licks and how he was greatly influenced by people like Albert King and
oh
all
yeah,
those people.
well yeah, fairly put it. To give credit where credit's due, he spent a lot of time being an Albert King parrot. Stevie could have been Albert King's pet parrot who mimicked everything back to him, and that was one of the. I mean, he loved Albert King. Albert King loved him too. That was the great thing about that, is that we were friends with so many different people, and there was like a mutual respect, and it even goes a little bit deeper than that. It gets into the business of the music and respect to those people. I won't go there. It's kind of it's not my place to say really, but it's yeah, it was nothing but respect. So I don't. The last thing I want to sound like, yeah, we weren't a blues band, because I mean we did, everything came from that, but we were just trying to write our own music. We were trying to be ourselves, and obviously heavily influenced and mentored by a bunch of great music that came from those worlds.
So one thing I never understood was when you guys played Montreux Festival, I don't know what year, but the first time you played there and you were booed off the stage. But that was also a gig that pretty well changed things for the band in a huge way. How did that
Yeah.
gig happen? How did you wind up? Because at that point you weren't really well known. How did you wind up in Montreux?
Well, yeah, Lou Ann Barton had previously been in the band, and we all realized we needed to part ways. Well, she stayed in New York, the New York City area, Providence, Rhode Island, the whole Northeast. And Jerry Wexler saw her singing with Roomful of Blues and got her a deal with Elektra Records. And she made a record, and we were still beating the bars, and she had a record deal. And she did a record with the Muscle Shoals guys, and had a bunch of special guests on the record, and one day she called us and she goes, "How would you boys like to play my record release party?" We're like, "Okay." And something like I'll give you a few $100. And so we did this gig for her record release party, and Jerry Wexler came down from New York, and he's danced in front of the band like all night long. And at the end of the night, he said, "Man, this band needs to go to Montreux." He told our manager, he said, "You guys need to go to Montreux." He goes, "I'll call my friend Claude Nobbs, who's the music director, and I'll see if I can make that happen." Well, he did, and we went. And so it was a fast track, and Claude Nobbs, the festival lineup was full, but he stuck us on an acoustic night, a night of acoustic cultural and blues music. I think that I can see now from a production standpoint, it was easy to kind of move those kind of ideas around because you got an acoustic guitar player sitting down or a pianist, and so you can go. We can stick a band in here, and so we were kind of wedged in the middle of all that. And some people didn't really. I don't think they liked the tonality of the evening. Kind of a nice, quiet evening of like legacy blues artists, upright bass and piano and dobros and guitar, and then all of a sudden here comes this loud electric band from Texas. And so the booze were, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 people out of whatever that place held at that point in time, 1,500 or something. But so it sounds like nobody likes you when that many people are booing. And so, yeah, but David Bowie was in the audience that night, and that's how we met him. And the next night we stayed in Switzerland. We had a day off before we were coming back to the States. And we did a show in the basement downstairs, which was the musicians' bar below the casino. We did a gig down there. That night was an evening. That particular night was an evening upstairs with Jackson Browne, an evening with. And when that show was over, they all came down and they were like, "Who are you guys? And where are you from? And can we jam?" And so we jammed with him like all night long. And that's when he offered us his studio out in Los Angeles. And we went and made tapes that then became Texas Flood. So a lot of different things happened in 2 days that were pretty significant. Us meeting Bowie, Stevie being on the Let's Dance record and preparing to do the world tour that didn't work out, but a lot of different things happened for us. I think it was kind of 5 years of a lot of hard work that became the overnight success.
How did you feel from that experience? I mean, it must have been strange to be there. It must have been weird to get booed a little bit, but also to obviously attract the attention of both David Bowie and Jackson Browne, both of whom I guess had a hand in pretty well changing your lives or your projection.
Oh yeah, they definitely did. I did. They definitely did. It was it's probably one of the most poignant moments in my music career. I remember because we to go all the way from playing around Texas to go to Switzerland and go, well, we can't get over there. Somebody loaned us the money for
That
the
could have been
trip.
cheap.
Well, no, I mean, because Stevie, to his credit or not, said, "Well, I want to take our gear, so we play on our gear." It was like air freight, all these different things. So the short story was that at the time we were, I don't know, maybe making $500-600 a night as a band, and the trip cost us 15,000
Wow.
to go do a show, and we did it. And so when all the booing happened and then our show was over, no encore or anything, sitting in the dressing room, I was thinking, my God, I go, now we owe somebody $15,000. And I looked up at Stevie, and Stevie looked over at me and he said, "Well, I didn't think we sounded that bad." Like, yeah, I don't. I said, man, and I'm thinking about the 15,000, and all of a sudden the knock came at the door, and we said yes, and they said yes, excuse me. They go, "David Bowie would like to meet y'all," and I remember I said, "David Bowie, which David Bowie?" They go, "The David Bowie, Mr. David Bowie would like to meet y'all. If y'all could join him in the downstairs in the musicians bar in 10 or 15 minutes." And we walked down there, and he was just sitting there in a booth, and we sat down with him and just started chatting. He's like, "What a wonderful show. It's just fabulous." And we're like, "God, that's David Bowie sitting right there." So everything, then all that everything happened after that with David Bowie. But I'm thinking like 10 minutes earlier, I'm thinking, our ass is in a sling. I go, we're in debt. And we don't make enough money to pay that back and eat and pay rent. And all of a sudden things started to change. So it was like a very dynamic half hour, if you will.
If before that gig, did you have any inkling as to what you wanted that band to do or to be? Like, what would your idea of success have been before Montreux?
Oh, I mean, yeah, I never really, I mean, in a way, the sky would be the limit. I mean, you just, I think that in my way of living, um, my view of that is that whatever you, however hard one is willing to work for something, whatever success comes to them from their hard work is deserving. So you work and you work harder and you become more successful. You just keep working hard to become more successful. There wasn't like a particular, like I want to play stadiums. I want to play arenas. I go. I mean, all those things are kind of dreamy. And you see the Beatles play Shea Stadium, and you go, yeah, that'd be cool. But the only thing that I could say other than that was when I was 15 years old. A friend of mine, we were jamming in his bedroom, and his sister ran in with the new Rolling Stone, and on one page it said, "Skinner plays the Garden." Leonard Skinner had played Madison Square Garden, which was like, if you played Madison Square Garden, you had arrived, And I said, I'm going to play there someday, and we all had a big laugh about it. And then one day I did. So, I mean, it's aspirational more than like specific goals of plateau. Yeah, aspirational related to like I work and I hope and I work and um, I never there never was if I can play a club I'll be done, or if I could play a music hall that'll be enough, or if I just it wasn't a I don't it wasn't greedy. It was just like, if I, as hard as I work and as good as we can be and as hard as we can work, whatever happens for us, the more success the better would be the goal. If there.
The amount of success you achieved, did that ever surprise you?
Yeah, it did. It did, because you kind of toil away for so long, and I think there's that hump that hump in life that we can talk about, like getting over the hump at the health club, where you finally start getting in shape, or as a runner, or in your career. There's a kind of a hill to climb, and at some point in time, you can kind of get where you get over the hill and you go, wait a minute, things are kind of coming together. I believe this about the path of commitment and hard work. I think that I believe, because I've seen this in my own life, that you stay on the path and you stay committed, stay focused. This is plan A. There's no two or three different plans. And you stay, that's your best chance of having that pathway open up to, say, more success, and to do better with what you do. And so, um, but when it happens, like when things turn, like they did with meeting David Bowie, and Jackson Brown, and having those opportunities, you kind of pinch yourself and you're kind of surprised, because you're thinking, God, we've been doing this. I've been doing this for, I mean, that's not all that long now when I think about it, but I've been doing this for 7 years and hardly been able to, I have to go get other jobs just to keep food on the table. And then all of a sudden, some big superstar really likes you, and you go, I'm surprised, because it just hasn't been part of what your life has been.
And do you feel like the music or the band really didn't change before or after? It was just, I mean, it progressed, but what you were doing was essentially the same thing, but all of a sudden people were listening to you.
Yeah, and I think that, today we call these people influencers, and you
Right.
talk about validation and status and hierarchy and all these different kind of things that I think they're just part of society. That I mean, we were not a great band the day after David Bowie had started talking about us, as compared to 2 days before he ever saw us. You know, the difference was that he was impressed, he loved it, and he took action and talked about it. So all of a sudden, it's like, oh yeah, right, Stevie Ray Vaughan in Double Trouble. Like last week, it's like, no, who are you talking about? So I mean, that's kind of how things happen. I mean, I saw this go on in the last few years, a number of years, with Gary Clark.
Right.
I've known Gary Clark since he was 13 years old, and played with him a bunch. We had a band together, we played around town, and he's always been great, but kind of like what we were. You go do gigs, and everyone's like, yeah, okay, that sounds cool, or we're trying to eat dinner here because I'll kind of turn it down a little bit. And then, 5 years later, it's like, oh my God, Gary Clark.
Yeah.
It's like the new Jimi Hendrix. Like, I remember when people wanted us to turn down because they were trying to finish their salad or eat their steak or something. And now, so it's just those things. It's a funny thing about human nature. It almost seems like we need somebody important to say, these guys are good, or something that's important, like these guys got a record deal. They were kind of a cool band, a couple of months ago, but now they have a record deal, so they've become a big deal. And now so and so really likes them, so now they're a really big deal, or they, whatever that is.
But did the success of Texas Flood surprise you?
I just didn't know what would happen. I kind of did because I don't know. It's a strange thing. I guess it was surprising, but I welcomed it. That's probably the truest thing I could say about that. I mean, we recorded some tapes, and they weren't even going to be a record until Stevie was in the midst of the rehearsals with David Bowie, and we started thinking like, well, what could we contribute? We were talking with him. He'd come back and he was trying to figure out what do we do to keep the band together. Me going and doing this tour and all that. We were like, well, there isn't anything. He was talking about splitting his pay with us, and we go, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. And we started thinking about the tapes that we had recorded, and we thought, well, let's call John Hammond. And John Hammond said, oh, y'all you have tapes? He goes, well, I'll call my friend Greg Geller at CBS Records, and I'll tell him to sign you. You guys are fabulous. He thought we were fabulous from the get-go. John Hammond did. So he called Greg Geller, and Greg said, John, if you love these guys, I'll sign them. Greg Geller was getting in the middle of having CBS reissue the OK label. You've seen that?
Yep, yep.
OKEA. So a lot of people don't know it, but it had been out of circulation. He was going to bring it back into print. He said, so they're going to fire me for that because people need to be able to get this music. It's not going to make the label a bunch of money. It needs to be out there, so I might as well sign your guys too. And that way they can go ahead and just fire me. And he did, and they fired him. And Texas Flood came out, and it just started doing really well. It was kind of a weird record, and probably an odd band, which was perfect, I'd say, in the midst of Psychedelic Furs, Flock of Seagulls, Culture Club, Talking Heads, the Cult, all these. That was not what was happening. So I think it in and of itself sounded like brand new music.
Right.
Yeah, as odd as it is,
And I presume, in a weird way, MTV kind of helped for the next album. The music videos might have helped you guys as well.
They helped a bunch. That was a whole new status level.
Mm-hmm.
Before you like a band without a deal, and then a band with a deal, and then a band with a deal that has a successful record, and now you have a video. So you're really somebody. You're really going places. And at that time, MTV was so young. They had the promise of videos 24/7, and they didn't have enough unique. They didn't have enough videos to play unique performances for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. So they put almost, I think, many people just into higher rotation just to fill the commitment. And so they played us more than they probably would have, and that helped a whole bunch.
How did success change you, or did it change you at all? How did it affect you?
Oh man, I need to bring my wife in here and have her answer it. I don't. You know what? That's a good question. I'm not sure I can even answer that. I mean, I got more money.
I always feel weird asking this question, but because it's a weird thing, but not financially. But was there a moment where you thought, I've made it?
No, that I've made it to someplace else.
Right.
You know what? That's a good question. And you know what? Actually, you're thinking about it, I do have a hard learned answer to that. With more success comes more responsibility and a lot more work. It's a lot more serious work if you don't want to lose it. Um, and you get to a place you go, wow, we have something good going on here all the way across the board. And so it demands a lot of attention and commitment and even a lot harder work than I imagined, and a lot of decision making, of which um, they all are critical decisions. You know, when the stakes are low and there's not much at stake, you know, you're just making music. You know, there's not a lot of that to deal with. When it starts to get dumped in your lap, so to speak, then you it's like you're at the show here, and every decision you make is going to have a big effect on what happens. So that that caused me to change in that regard. So my view of it, which was pretty priceless, I'd say about Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble, is we always viewed our way of making music and how we did it together was something that was never changing. I would say, I mean, of course it probably did, but as, for the music that we made, but we didn't change our process. We didn't try to change who we were. We didn't we didn't wake up and go, hey, we're at a different level. We need to start doing, you know, becoming somebody different and you know, doing all these different things different. We were always the same band. We were the same people in that regard. We had a lot more responsibilities and a lot more commitments to keep, and that's what we had to change to grow into. And however that changes, it probably made us stronger, more responsible people in the end.
I love the Instep album, and I just when I think of Riviera Paradise, like to me that just seemed like a departure or maybe a prelude to what was about to come. Am I incorrect in assuming that?
Um, you know, we the band part and parcel struggled with you know drugs and alcohol, and so that was the record where we made it, and we were all real clear headed, and we'd had a number of different things happen there, and for one, Double Trouble without Stevie actually wrote the song Crossfire, and that was a different thing that had never happened before, and we contributed in ways that we had never as together as a group, um, and we were more clear headed, we were healthy, and so it was a good clear process. I think that shows in that I say the final record that we made together while he was alive. We put out other records. It was stuff that we had recorded earlier, but it was the last studio record that we recorded. And the night that Stevie died, we were at Alpine Valley, and he and I sat and talked for got about 45 minutes. And one of the things he said to me was, he said, "Man, I've got a bunch of wild new ideas for what we can do next." He goes, after I get back from this thing I'm going to do with Jimmy, his brother, they were going to go promote the family style a little bit, and then we were going to get back to work. He said, because I sure hope everybody likes it, because I'm like, I'm hearing like some strings and horns, and he goes, I don't know, it's pretty trippy. He goes, I hope everybody likes it. I said, I can't wait to get back to it, because Instep was very successful. The touring was, and everything we had really pulled together. Many years of some bad decisions and good decisions, and a lot of life lived kind of sorted itself out to say, you know what, we're kind of we got our thing together here. We're kind of we're clear, and then it was over, so that we never got to go there. But I think that was I think I think that's fair to say that Instep was I think a indication of that and other things we'd never maybe even explored before that were to come had he lived, and we'd continued.
So I don't know if you can vocalize this, but how do you recover from something like that? You know, because one minute everything is going well, and the next minute he's gone. I presume you walk away from music, and do you contemplate not making music anymore, or what happens to you?
That was the worst thing that ever occurred in my life, and I probably it took me. I mean, it probably took me a good 25 plus years to kind of work through what all that was about. And it's
Right.
deep. It was deep, but more immediately, I do remember a moment that I hadn't done anything. I was sitting on the couch in my house, and the phone rang one day. It was before cell phones, and I answered the phone, and it was a friend of mine, a guy named Stephen Bruton, guitar player, producer, songwriter, and he said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm just sitting on the couch." He goes, "You're sitting on the couch?" I said, "Yeah, I was just kind of, I don't know, just sitting on the couch." He said, "I kind of figured that." He said, "I want you to get up and go get a drum kit and meet me at Wink Tyler's studio. You're going to play drums on this record I'm getting ready to produce." I said, "Yeah, I don't, I can't, I can't do that. I don't think I can." He goes, "You know what? I'm not taking no for an answer. You can do it, and you're going to get your ass up off that couch and go get that drum kit. And if you're not here in an hour and a half, I'm going to come looking for you. I'm going to drag you over here." So I did what he told me to, and I did that record. And all of a sudden, something opened up, and I thought, you know what? I could actually maybe do something else. And so it was just a long road, not only a long road back, but a road to new places after Stevie's death.
How long does it take you to like love music again?
Yeah, God, that's a hard question to answer.
I mean, you were I mean, you started Archangels not that long after that, right? Like within a few years.
No, it was actually pretty soon, right after the story that I just told you. Yeah, that was I don't know, I don't know what that was, but it was another one of those things of instinct where I ran into my friend Charlie Sexton, and he told me that Doyle Bramhall just moved back to town. Yeah, Doyle Jr. And I didn't know that, but I heard this song that the two of them had written called Living in a Dream. And when I heard the song, I got an idea for a band. You two guys and me and Tommy. And that was probably the quickest thing that ever happened in my life, where somebody caught wind of that. They pitched us for a show. We committed to do the show. And like in 2 weeks, we had a record deal on the table.
Once again, your instincts.
And the instinct was, I just saw, you know what, it was kind of like, I think it was a survival instinct, something that even I didn't quite recognize, but I need to go on and I want to continue playing music. And maybe that was the thing that fed that moment where I looked and I went, "We've got two guys. I've known these guys their whole life practically, and we'd be a great band together to play, just to play." And then it turned real. Other, forces conspired to get us together and keep us together, if you will. And that became the Archangels. I loved the music of that band. I don't I Nothing yet has really grabbed my passion like what Stevie and Tommy and Reese and I had together. That was kind of like, you know, my baby.
Mm-hmm.
I love playing music. I love playing music today. The show you saw at Massey Hall, had a great time. I probably played better than I ever have. I'm a better player. You would hope that, I mean, that's what I always want to be. I want to be a better player for the music. And so, I mean, my playing, I think, is better than it's ever been. Where my love is and my passion and all that is that's kind of something that's kind of deeply personal to me, with my connections with who I make it with, more so than just how quote unquote badass we might be together alone.
How did you wind up joining Kenny's band? This would have been 2006.
Is that when it was?
I think so, yeah.
I've lost track. Wow. Has it been that long? No, you could be right. No, I've known Kenny. He did one record without me, but I've done all of his other records. I actually met him when he was 7 years old, when his father co-produced a show as a benefit that Double Trouble did for his father. And he was 7 years old. He saw Stevie play. He said, "I want to do that. I want to play guitar like him." And so years later, when he made his first record, they called me. I had no remembrance of any of that. But once we started talking about it, I went, "Oh, yeah, I remember us doing it. I remember that." Anyway, I made his first record with him and finally joined up with him, his touring band, here in the last 15 years, I say, right? Or
And
however
that,
long it's been.
but that's crazy when you think about this kid who sees Stevie Ray Vaughan, your band, and says, "I want to do that," and a number of years later, you're playing in that band.
I know. I know. I mean, you can't make this shit up, really. I mean, you
No,
can't plan.
and
It's
what
not
a
a plan.
right,
Yeah.
and what a great player! Like I was so blown away by that show, um, for a number of reasons. Great venue, great band, great company, whatever. But it was just like I was in awe. Like I just thought, wow, what a great show this is.
It's a really, really great band. And it's, towards an earlier question, that's not something, a goal you can make up when you're, 20 years earlier. Things come along, you go, you know what, I'm gonna do that. I'm going to do this, or if I can, I want to do that, or I've been asked to do this, I'm going to do that. So that's one of these things about like goals, and I go, or what's your plan? I go, you can't, that, like me playing with Kenny back before I ever met him, that couldn't have been a goal or part of a plan,
Right.
specific.
So
And I don't
what?
think, and I come to see that life, I don't think life really works that way. It's kind of like Mike Tyson said, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the face. So the other thing is that you have a plan until something comes like, oh, wait a minute, that's a better idea. So I go that whole, I'm planning, and certain things you can kind of plan for, but I don't think you can plan for life. Or I think somebody might be doing themselves an injustice if they try to plan their life.
Right. So many people I've talked to have reached a certain goal or have had success or whatever, not because of planning, but being there at the right time and being prepared and being ready.
I think that's probably really the truth of it all anyway,
Right.
regardless of all the other, you know, talk and, idealization and all these other kind of things that are just, they can, it all can kind of be loose talk, but life just kind of unfolds the way it's going to. And, I think I make right decisions, if you will, better decisions, not so good, horrible decisions. It's a mixture of all of them. And, you know, what did a friend of mine tell me last night? Kurt Vonnegut wrote. He said, otherwise, we're all just kind of farting around a lot. you know?
When you like, I thought of you when you were playing Voodoo Child on on stage at Massey Hall, and obviously a song that you played with Stevie Ray. I presume you also a thing that you would have played on the Hendrix Experience tour. When you hear a song like that that you used to play with Stevie Ray, where does it take you? What happens? What do you make that connection?
You know what? I try not to be. First of all, I try not to be bored with the idea because I played it so many damn times.
Right.
Seriously, you know. And the other ones, I go, wait a minute, can I put some kind of new kind of energy or something into this? And then most importantly, I think the best music is made. Can I just stay in the moment of what we're doing? Because then the rest it just is what it is. Otherwise, it's just what it is. Um,
Okay, so when you're on tour or driving around, and all of a sudden the music of your old band comes on, what happens? Do you go? Can you ever listen to it objectively, or does it always take you to the studio or to a moment?
it's a mix of all those. I'll tell you what, I actually appreciate it more as time goes on. Yeah, because I'm further away from it in direct connection, if you will. From I can listen to it, I think, a little bit more objectively. Um, I go, oh yeah, that sounds good. I remember that. I remember when I didn't think it sounded that good. Being the self critic, or
Well, that's reassuring, though, isn't it? That you can't get to a point where you can enjoy it and think that it does sound actually good.
yeah. But that being said, I don't go back and I don't sit around and put our old music on and just sit around listening to it. I mean, I listen to it quite a bit, developing it, making it, living it. Um, but it comes across every once in a while. Every once in a while, I'll go check something out for some kind of reference. I'm kind of curious. I go, oh, that sounds good. That's better than I used to think it was.
You talked about you playing better and you've improved. I guess if that's the right word. How do you get better as a musician at this point?
Well, practice. I mean, I sit around and I kind of work on things that I can't do. I mean, just for me as a drummer, me playing drums by myself, and so I get intrigued with challenging myself with that, and until I can put that together. A lot of it is kind of a practice of state of mind, in the music to say, let me have no preconceptions. I know what the music is generally. I know how it goes, so I try to be really, in a weird way, as mindless as I can be, and kind of let that thing take over that already knows what it's doing, but it can respond to the moment. And also, it's a kind of a double-edged sword because I have a responsibility to, at times introduce and lead a little bit, and obviously to keep time. And the other one is like, can I do that and kind of let go of myself and let go of my thoughts, because then it's really good. We had several moments on that tour that you saw, and this last run that we just did. We had some moments where it was like I go, I don't know who's playing this music, but it sounds really good. And that's a really cool thing to have happen, where you're going, all of a sudden people are just doing things together, and it all just happened in the moment. Improvisational, impromptu, just started happening. This is where it gets really good.
And when you think that way, I mean, I wonder if that takes you out of that moment. Do you know what I mean? Like if you're sitting there, because I've been told that it's almost like an out of body experience, and you're sitting there going, "I can't believe this is happening." But I wonder if you start thinking that way, as soon as you start thinking, "I can't believe it's happening," then you're kind of out of it.
Yeah, that can happen. You can pull right out of it. It's it's hard to let go. I mean, just generally speaking, that's a common phrase around certain places where you go, can you just let go? I mean, like, what is it? It's not even just about playing music, but can you just let go of something? So when you can found that all of a sudden it seems like everybody's kind of let go of whatever it is they needed to let go of, and the music's just happening. Probably the worst thing you can do is say, wow, we've let go, my God, then start thinking about that fact, and then you go, uh-oh, here comes the idea of not letting go back into and then everything starts becoming disrupted towards
Right.
that idea. So it's a strange, interesting place to be. I mean, it's really fascinating. It's very cool.
I mean, when you think about that, 5-year-old kid with twigs or the branches from his tree pounding on things, and you look at this career that's been a phenomenal career of many highs and lows, but a lot of incredible music has come out of you playing. How do you look back on this?
I don't know. I kind of can't believe it, really. I thought I'd be dead before I was 40. So I've been playing for 51 years. So I go, well, okay, that didn't happen. I don't know. I'm grateful, and sometimes I'm not grateful enough. I can take it for granted, but I just I just keep on going.
And do
Kind
you
of like
have the
the old Ever Ready Bunny. Remember the Ever Ready
yeah?
Bunny? I kept still going, so I don't know. I just keep going, and you know, I respect that in my life, and I'm grateful for it.
And the passion that you felt as that young kid pounding away on whatever furniture, do you still have that same passion for the drums?
Yeah, that all comes in the let go idea, because back then I was already way let go, right? That whole act was like me. I was just wild, and I just let go of whatever it was, and I go, yeah, and I get there. Yeah, I have that. I have the enthusiasm, but those moments, that we were just talking about, that's when I'm kind of like that 6-year-old kid again.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Well, I didn't know enough. I didn't know enough back then, and so now the idea is like, well, can I forget that much? So that I can become that little kid again in the moment. Because that's all I was doing when I was 6 years old, just living in that moment. I wasn't a professional musician.
Um, is there, other than the work you do with Kenny Wayne Shepherd, is there any other projects you're working on?
Um, I do occasional gigs with Billy Gibbons. We do some stuff. We have a band that we do annually called the Jungle Show. It's Jimmy Vaughn and Billy Gibbons and me and Mike Flanagan.
Sufoli.
Yeah, Supoli, and there's that, and I'm getting ready to go. Actually, I'm getting ready to go do a gig with Mike Flanagan and Anson Funderburg. We're going to be an organ, guitar, drum trio. We're opening for ZZ Top in Las Vegas next month.
Wow.
We're doing that, and yeah, I'm looking right now at the Experience. Hendrix is going to do a tour this year, so we're talking about that.
And what is that like for you? To obviously Hendrix is a big influence to be able to tour like that on that show.
Yeah, that's a very big gig. I work a lot. That's many hours a day of me playing drums. About a 3 hour show. It has been historically that I play, and fascinating though because it's had a bunch of great artists. It's kind of like summer camp, and I've gotten to play with a lot of different people. Everybody from Joe Satriani to Dweezil Zappa, Kev Mo, Caesar and David from Los Lobos, and Taj Mahal, and Buddy Guy, and Johnny Lang, and Eric Johnson, and Doyle. I mean, just Mato Nanji from, if you know who he is, uh, and a lot, Calvin Cook. I mean, it's just been so many people. Zach Wild, all these different people that I play drums with, and so it's quite the experience. Experience.
What is it? My final question. What do you think it is about you that has allowed you all these great opportunities, musical opportunities?
I don't know. That's a really good question. It's a hard one. I don't know. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I guess people like me and like the way I play, and I continue to do it. I really don't know other than that.
Well, you've certainly done well for yourself.
Maybe they think I'm good or something. I don't know. Maybe they like the way it feels, or I don't, I don't know. I keep doing it, and they keep asking me. So I keep doing it, and they keep asking me.
Well, thank God they do, and thank you so much for doing this. As I said, I know it's just another interview for you, but it's episode 400 for me, which means a lot, and I really appreciate you doing this.
Oh, I've had a great time. I thought it was really, really great. I appreciate the opportunity. Yeah.
Well, I hope I get to see you again because I love that last show. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.